Hey everyone, David here and welcome to BrickVault. During our May 4th weekend we announced the pre-sale of Booksy's UCCS Invisible Hand. Now it's finally here and in front of me, and I gotta say, it's just as impressive as it first looked in the renders. But before we take a deeper dive, what even are we looking at here? This model was inspired by the invisible hand that we see in Star Wars Episode 3, or to be a little more specific, in the first scenes of the movie in the space battle over Coruscant. It was a modified Providence-class dreadnought and served as the capital ship of Warlord General Grievous during the Clone Wars before it got split into two and crashed into a Coruscant airfield by the best pilot in the galaxy.
Another happy landing.
Now this model doesn't split apart, don't get your hopes high here, but it has other amazing features that make a lot more sense, and I'm gonna show you those in a bit. But before we get started, make sure to support us and the designer and give yourself a treat by visiting www.brickvault.toys or click the first link in the video description and get the instructions and parts list for this thing yourself. With said parts list, you are able to easily obtain all necessary pieces on Bricklink yourself, so you can have as much fun with this amazing custom build as I have here in the studio. That's www.brickvault.toys, or click below, and back to the video. It's hard to portray the sheer size of this ship through the camera. It's by far the longest model I have in the studio. It completely breaks my review setup, so please excuse any background colors outside of the shadowy grey. It's just over 1 meter or 40 inches long, and it actually scales perfectly to our UCCS Venator class Star Destroyer by Martin Letter that I unfortunately don't have in the studio yet. But it also scales perfectly to our Acclamator by Fly in Space, and that's already looking amazing. I promise once I have the remaining BrickVault models in the studio, I'm gonna do comparisons. But of course, so you get a sense of scale, here's a shoe next to it. Now this model has a very imposing presence to it. It is for sure meant to be the centerpiece of a LEGO Star Wars collection, there's no doubt. It has over 6,000 pieces that were actually a lot simpler to assemble than one might think. It has a very strong Technic core that you basically just build onto and add details and paneling in the end. We have a ton of different details, shapes and angles on the outside. Most of the ship is grey, but Brooksy made sure to add the correct markings in dark blue and yellow, which breaks up the monotony of an otherwise fairly straightforward ship design in universe. Speaking of, like several other capital ships in Star Wars, this also has spaces between larger panels that are meant to show the massive scale of these type of ships, using a ton of transparent yellow pieces between black to represent windows and lights and all that stuff. I think that's always super fun and interesting to look at, and the black throughout the model generally gives it a lot more depth and contrast, especially in the front where we also have one of the 3 bridges of the ship. This one is the one where Anakin, Obi-Wan, Palpatine and R2 are located when they crashed the ship on Coruscant. While we're at the front, the shaping here is really tricky and interesting to look at. It's generally an area that you want to avoid touching or manipulating too much, since it's probably the most fragile area of this ship. Still looks really good though. We have some brick-built insignias here in the front as well. Really tricky to get right in the scale without using stickers, but Brooksy did a great job. The ship gets wider towards the back, and you can see that the hangar doors are open, and there's an energy shield here that Anakin and Obi-Wan first have to deactivate with their tiny Jedi interceptors, and yes, they are included with the build. I'm gonna show you where they are located later on. The curvature of the ship has been captured really nicely. On top we have the second bridge, which sticks out from the main body and is angled backwards. This is also an interesting section to look at in my opinion. There are some pretty interesting angles in the back here as well, and while we're here, let's take a quick look at the 3 main engines. But let's open up this big boy and peek inside. First you have to remove the bridge assembly, which just sits loosely on top. Then we can remove the 2 big roof sections, and that's it. Inside we have 3 rooms, the first one being a micro-scale hangar. That's where the Jedi interceptors crashed. I really like the attention to detail here on the walls, especially in this compact space. And in the back, whoops, I accidentally put a pilot droid here. That's for another build, hint hint. But yeah, I assume that's the area where they got trapped in the force shield. The next room is a lot more interesting though. This one's fully minifig compatible and it's basically inside the large bridge that we removed earlier. I went ahead and put the appropriate figures inside. It even has 2 floors in it with angled staircases, which is amazing, especially for giving one of your figs the high ground. Brooksy left some studs on the floor for minifigs to connect to, and there's the chair that Palpatine was tied to, as well as these interesting lamps that were seen in the scene. I think I have to say this is my favorite part of the interior. It just looks so complete and cool. Could very well be a separate Lego set if you ask me. Anyways, right next to it we have yet another interior, and this is the room where they met General Grievous, who was shorter than they expected.
General Grievous, you're shorter than I expected.
There's a ton of room for posing minifigs here. The trans bright green slopes represent computer consoles, and we have the captain's chair in the middle as well as 2 separate chairs up front, another lovely addition to the interior. The interior absolutely was not necessary to add for this model to be amazing as is, but I'm so glad Brooksy did add it, because it just adds a level of playability to this build that you'd never expect from it. And if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. Brooksy did not sacrifice the look of this model for the sake of an interior. Now, how do you move this monstrosity of a Lego build around? That is actually much easier than I first thought. Just put your hand beneath the belly right behind the first black stand and right in front of the last black stand. It feels like it's bending a little in the middle, but I can assure you that it's not breaking. And if your glass is half full, you can maybe even see the little bending in the middle as a feature as seen in the movie. But jokes aside, this is a heavy model and you want to carry it around using both of your hands at all times. I'd recommend maybe removing the bridge assembly before moving the MOC, because it can fall fairly easily. It didn't happen to me yet, and it'd be a fairly easy repair anyways, but just so you know. The 3 stands guarantee a very secure stance, and it's totally possible to slide it around on the stands if you're on a smooth surface. Generally, I haven't found too many weak points on this build. As I said, the front is a little fragile, but that's not a section that you interact with anyways, and maybe the middle bridge is a little flimsy, but all major panels are well connected, and if anything breaks, it was always an easy repair and nothing major to worry about, and throw the towel and walk away in frustration. So yeah, that's the all new UCCS Invisible Hand by Brooksy. What an exceptional, spectacular build. I can't wait to add the Venator next to it at some point. Keep in mind that if you want to build this behemoth for yourself and want to support us as well as the designer, head on over to BrickVault.toys to get the instructions and parts list, or just scroll down a couple of inches to get the link that leads you directly to the build. Make sure to like and subscribe and let us know what other types of creations you would like to see us build in the future. And we'll see you next time at BrickVault.